Gateway of the Mind is a well-known creepypasta. A bunch of mad scientists attempting some unbelievable literal interpretations of a figure of speech. This experiment was performed promptly after World War II ended, and it seems to fit in the long line of strange experiments performed by the Nazis, either during or post-war. What I'm about to tell you is one of those experiments. The Nazi Ring was famous for its backdoor scientists, the occult researchers. Special expeditionary divisions of its reach were often sent out to search for artifacts and locations of occult and religious significance. Meanwhile in Germany, bunkers were assembled and mansions and castles were fitted with labyrinths and dungeons, which were filled with strange experiments and research notes. Whenever the Allies found these places, they are often gutted, burned, or otherwise destroyed and abandoned. Whenever a lab was found intact, the research was often incoherent or missing, or later destroyed by the Allies to prevent the Nazis from recovering any hidden data. A lot of Nazi experiments were kept under the radar until recently. Veterans who served as guards in the lab and ritual zones have explained what they've seen, or folders and books have been uncovered by boxes and crates belonging to the scientists. A few of these contents are common research gold. Exactly the true power is often debated, but it appears that it is often described in Nazi research as immortality, unable to die, invincibility, or other factors surrounding losing the capability to die in some way or another. A large part of this research was actually legitimately based. Certain doses of chemical compound and aid blood flow to aging people. First contents are now used in today's transplant surgeries, grafting, ointments that renew skin, antibodies and various diseases, and fitness dieting research. However, one set of crate discovered in Hamburg in 1999 went way off of its research style. This crossbled to the occult experiments and immortality research. The introductory folder and proofs of concept of research began with the principles of the brain controlling the body completely and wholly. As the body slowly degrades around it, it continues to function. Further statements say that the reason the body is left to degrade is because the human brain is set on a biological timer, such as why butterflies can only live a day, yet other insects can last longer. The brain tells us to die. It is proposed that, as the brain grows, it begins to make connections, resulting in the human becoming more mature and having an advanced brain. But at the age of 35 and 50, however, these connections slowly break down, resulting in forgetfulness, dementia, and other mental disease reserved for the elderly. The Nazi scientists proposed that the brain has a universal kill switch that activates as soon as the brain is fully developed. In normal humans, this kill switch will initiate a shutdown sequence in bodily function, which occurs over several decades. As soon as the body is fully shut down, the brain will be forced to die through the lack of oxygenated blood. It is said that the Werner Syndrome, a disease where people age rapidly, is a result of the kill switch functioning activating far too early. The Nazis proposed that they could remove the kill switch and give the human mind immortality, and for that, complete immortality. Needless to say, brain surgery was incredibly difficult during those times, but it was possible. In the stack of the folders, there were many different diagrams and past research on the brain, psychologically, the human mind, and the like. The experiments were initially proposed to the Nazi executives in 1940, and permission was granted to perform the experiments on 1942 under one condition. The experiment must be conducted outside of Germany. The German populace must not see this experiment in any way, shape, or form. It was not surprised to the scientists that the executives were paranoid about public relations, but the idea of performing this research outside of the fatherlands was foreign in on itself. Most experiments were performed in bunkers and basements. Regardless, the scientists compelled and were able to organize a setup with their allies, Japan. In late 1942, the research had begun. Here's where it gets strange. The research team has taken over a Japanese orphanage. The orphanage was in the hills, supposedly somewhere in Shamaine, the area nearby Hiroshima. The scientists deduced that if they tried to take the usual test subjects, old or diseased people with nothing left to live for, similar in the fashion of to Gateway of the Mind, they would be playing with variable of disease, or more importantly, they would be experimenting on a brain that has already have an activated kill switch, rendering it useless in the context of finding the solution. As a result, the Nazi scientists demand that children, namely the orphans of the orphanage, which they deemed to again have nothing else to live for, would become the test subjects. Their young brains eliminated any cause of a concern of already activated kill switch. To begin the experiments, the children went through numerous immunizations and intense psychological testing, and keep a general benchmark for their subjects. Next, they began with the older staff of the orphanage. Put under anesthesia, the surgeons opened up their skulls to find a good cross-section of an adult brain, and began to find key differences between it and a child's brain. After gaining a model of both the child brain and the adult brain, the scientists deduced that the universal kill switch wasn't located in the brain at all, but in the cerebellum, located at the rear. The cerebellum commands all subconscious activities in the brain, which is understandable since it isn't a conscious action to set off the kill switch. Systematically, they took the tallest child in the orphanage and began to open her up. They were about to begin their first kill switch asectomy. They had managed to open up the cerebellum and remove that part presuming to be the kill switch. However, upon closing the subject up, they found that she had expired. They assumed that the incision of the brain had been too brash and requires far more precision. The body was dumped in the forest behind the orphanage. After inputs of different tools and different techniques developed, the scientists were finally able to remove the kill switch and successfully revive the patient. In May 1943, they had taken one of the youngest girls in the orphanage and removed the kill switch. The only function she lost was the ability to sweat. After their assumed success, the scientists had celebrated, after which everyone went to bed. The next morning, the girl did not wake up and was revealed to be comatose. After a while, she was revived successfully, and the kill switch asectomy continued. The initial success gave the doctors a new state of mind, one of refreshment. They were able to continue their experiments with the ease of the mind of the theory was proven. Well, so they assumed. Before the doctors continued their removal research, they commissioned several doctors in from Moscow who have trained in the practice of body revival. Technically it's on vacation, however it relies on the principle of using electric shocks and artificial hearts to power the body back up. They stated that the reason for this was that the original subject always became comatose or clinically dead whenever she went to sleep and then revived herself in the morning. She had no signs of this behavior before the experiment, and despite the fact that she revived, the doctors did not want to risk a success turning into a failure. The Russian scientists were put to the task of bringing her back to life whenever she expired. After several days of this, the Nazis concluded that it was safe to continue. Project Venom was a Russian experiment to create super soldiers from the theory of Dr. Frankenstein. It may also be form a base of Marvel superheroes as well. As a repayment for the use of the Russian scientists, Russia had asked that they combine the research of Project Venom with the Nazis' ongoing experiment. Naturally, the Nazis agree. However, the limited number of orphans was debilitating, as the Nazis required so many of them and could only offer a single girl. The Russians were content and began their proof of concept. They artificially created an arm over in Moscow, which was on its way to the orphanage and to be grafted on. To prove the amputation and replacement could work, in the meantime, the Russians had to prepare for this. The girl's right arm was amputated. Mysteriously short after, the Russian scientists packed up their equipment and left. The replacement arm never came, and the girl was left with a bandage strapped over where her right arm used to be. The Russians were said to have left in a fearful haste, as if suddenly the air had turned too cold for their tastes. One child out of the whole orphanage did not approve of the scientist's presence. In her act of rebellion, she stole paperwork and ripped it to shreds, broke glasswares, and wrecked surgery equipment. Despite her age, which she was 8 at the time, and her size, she had a surprising captivity of destruction. It was noted in the journal that she was heterochromatic as well, having brown and blue eyes from left to right. The senior scientists despised her, but could not restrain her without arousing suspicion. Instead, they ordered the Nazi soldiers to take care of her. She was brutally beheaded with a blunt bayonet. She was not buried, just left in the woods behind the orphanage. The soldiers told the caretakers that she had found a new family. The Nazi scientists attempt to play around with their successful experiments by trying different aspects to it. Sadly, none of them worked. Here is the list of them. Entry through the forehead, performed on a 10-year-old boy. Skull was deformed and the boy had virtually lobotomized by the end of it. However, he wasn't vegetated as a result, although he was mentally retarded due to the experiment. Entry through the lower jaw, performed on a 6-year-old girl. The tongue and most of the flesh of the lower jaw was removed and could not be replaced. The subject's sinuses were also scrambled. Entry through the side of the head. Subject was reluctantly half deaf. It should also be noted that there was no anesthesia during the surgery, and the screams were truly mortifying, as most journals read. Despite the failure of these, the kill switch were still removed, and the subject acted as much as the same way as the first girl, expired upon sleep. However, they were reduced to a mere 10 people due to all the previous failures. This is including the caretakers, and they have performed surgery on all of the children. The doctors began formulating the idea that in a child, a kill switch isn't already activated, but in an adult, a kill switch could be reversed using a chemical compound to eliminate the hormone produced and the kill switch then removed. This was performed on all the caretakers and was surprisingly successful as they all survived. During the experiment, scientists were told to watch over the successful children and monitor their behavior. This is the part where it gets freaky. They appear normal at first, just like any other children, playing, cheering, learning normally, but when separated from the others, they seem off. They stroll carelessly around, with a blank smile on their face, their eyes looking straight at you. If approached from behind, their head snap would move at an ungodly speed. For a moment, you can almost see an expression so vile that it would make you cower in fear. But then you realize that they are just forming their dreamy smile again. Another thing is that they follow us, but only when we are on our own. After finishing on my typewriter and heading to my room, I am often given a fright by one of the children standing several meters down the dark hallway, staring at me. When I go off to my room, she follows me, and I shut the door and jam the chair behind it, and then I can sleep safely. It feels like they're a ghost at night, and the funniest thing is, I keep seeing one child with reddish hair. I keep asking who the child is the next morning, but the caretakers say that they haven't had a child with reddish hair for a while. They also seem to be playing a game a lot more than I originally started. I haven't got much knowledge in Japanese, but it seems the game is named Circle U, as described by one of the translators. A group of children surround one child, who sits in the center alone. They linked arms and begin to move in a circular manner around the child, making scary faces at them and singing an eerie chant. You lose if you flinch. Upon talking to them, I've noticed they seem more dreamy, forgetful, and somewhat blank, as if the experiment wiped their memories as well. But it's not an innocent type of dreamy, rather something more sinister. They stare at you with wide eyes and ask you questions never thought they would know. One asked me to my face, "When your grandmother died, did she really leave you a gold-plated watch?" It may seem crazy, but my honest answer was, yes. Kagome Kagome means circle, circle. The game translates to circle you, and it's later known that the child who they find with reddish hair was the very child that rebelled against the scientist. In early 1945, Hiroshima was bombed, Germany forfeited, and the experiments are ground to a halt. The Germans began to pack up their equipment. Most of them have already returned home due to their mental welfare, stating that they showed signs of insanity. Only 4 scientists remained. After sending the last set of equipment off, the scientists deem it only justified that they are informing the caretakers that they are leaving, and they do so. And to the horror of one of the scientists, and a surprise to the rest, the head caretaker said in fluent German, "Will you play one last game with us?" The 3 scientists agreed, and a circle of children and caretakers formed around them. Now if you flinch, you lose. The one horrified scientist ran to the last truck and jumped on it without looking back. Now, if you go to Hiroshima, go around the woods and you may find some dirt trails there. If you travel down them, you will see beautiful forests. But if you go down to a trail that has signs of trucks going through, you will feel cold, and you will see that a lot of trees are cut down. But don't wander from the path, or you'll likely get lost in those vast woods. If you pay attention, you will notice that the tree trunks look like kneeling people, missing heads. If you continue, the air will get colder. Naturally, because you're climbing up a hill, right? Of course, eventually you will reach a clearing with an old stone building in the center, vines covering the place. Go inside if you want to play. As soon as you open the door, a foul smell will come out, similar to that of a rotting corpse. If you look down the hall, it will be dark regardless of the time of day, since there are no lights. Continue down the hall, take the first left, and then go down to the hall until you see one door that appears to be made out of red-colored wood, while the rest are brown. Open the door, you will find 10 happy children and caretakers, all wearing kimonos, playing a normal playroom. One is missing her arm, another is missing his forehead, and the third lacks a jaw. But all are bandaged with clinical precisions. The place should be very clean and tidy, depending on your standards of such things, and well lit. At once, your presence will be drawing attention to everyone in the room, including the ones that look far too preoccupied or distracted. They will turn to look at you with carefree smiles on their pleasant little faces. The head caretaker, in all her beauty, will ask, "Will you come play with us?" By this time, if you haven't soiled your pants, you really should, to save you the trouble later. If you say no, the door will slam shut on you. And if you try to go down the hallways to the exit, you will only find another dark hallway. Open any of the brown doors and you should find operating tables and bunk beds. If you continue down the third hallway, you will realize that a girl is standing several meters behind you, her face shrouded by shadows. Approach it and expect your doom. Continue down the hallway and try not to let her catch up to you. If you say yes, however, you will be welcomed to the room. The door will close behind you and everyone will form a circle around you. "Now sit down and don't flinch," a cheerful voice will say. "Just follow the instructions and you will survive." All light will disappear from the room, yet you can see the circle of children, each with a vicious expression on their face, one so vile you will probably flinch straight up. If you can stomach that, though, they will begin to move around and around you. Slowly, you will feel one of them lash towards you. If you look, however, there will be nothing there besides the children circling normally. If that wasn't enough, they will begin chanting, "Kagome, Kagome." I really can't explain any further. No one ever lives to tell the tale of what happens then. If you flinch before the chant, they simply continue as normal. If you choose to say maybe to the head caretaker or anything other than yes or no, It is told that the children's expressions will turn mortifying, and they will scream in an inhuman voice, "Decide! Decide!" If you do anything besides saying yes or no, from here, it is told that the children and the caretakers will slam the door on you. And if you turn around, the story varies. Supposedly, your worst fears will be waiting at the other end of the hallway, separating you from your exit, most notably the characters in aka Monto or the Rake. The least you can do is greet the creature before he tears you into oblivion. If he has the capacity, he may well respond, and you will die as a polite person. Don't greet him, and you will end up in another one of the beheaded bodies along the trail. If you respond, "I don't understand," and you must be genuine, the head caretaker will say, "Go to your school and watch the children play. You should understand then." Nothing will have changed, and close the door on your way out. It's common courtesy. Now, most creepypastas are fabricated. Some derive of a psychological stigma, and others are revamped ghost stories. But there is a small percentage of creepypastas which aren't like this. And it kind of gives you a pondering question. Just how many creepypastas that are not made of fiction? What if there's some very good truth to them? And I can tell you this, my dear friends, that this one is very much true.